Welcome back to Talking Leadership. Thank you for joining me. Today's podcast guest is Dre McLaughlin. Dre is the Director of Job Search Queensland. I had the opportunity, and thank you again to Dre, to join him on the Hot Hire podcast. I'll put a link to that in the description of this podcast. I opened the podcast by asking him about where he started his leadership journey. Thank you again for joining me, and now over to Dre.
Okay, so for me, it's probably going to sound a little bit cheesy or maybe a little bit weird to some people. So my first, stint at leadership was at primary school. So I absolutely love sports. I love football. And when I mean football, I mean the game with a round ball. So there'd be occasions. So I was nominated to be captain of the football team because I was probably one of the best players on the team. And there'd be occasions where, say if we were 2-0 down, I'm very competitive, so I love to win. And growing up, I was very much of a sore loser. So I'd get very frustrated at, my teammates and myself. And I'd try and take the game by the scruff of the neck and then just try and go and win the game with my team. If I wasn't able to do that, then I'd do whatever I can to score the goals. So that was probably my first stint, but very much through my career. My background's been in sales and recruitment. So a lot of that in sales, it's all about, driving yourself to the outcome. So if you want to make a certain amount of money, you've got to put in the hard work. You've got to learn. You've got to accept failure, because with sales, very up and down. So that's probably what I'd say my start's been.
It's mate, we could do a whole podcast just on that response. So, but we won't. But I will ask a couple of questions of you, if that's okay, Dre. One of them being, you said you had a competitive streak in you, and that's probably not dissimilar to most of the podcast guests that I've had to one degree or another. So, in the leaders that you've dealt with and that you've helped recruit and casting your mind back along your career pathway, have you found that it's the most competitive person that makes for the most effective leader, or that is only one element of an effective leader? And I use the word effective because I don't want to get trapped in the good versus bad leader. I think that black and whiteness doesn't really cover it for me. And, from a personal perspective, I've worked with a lot of very effective leaders, and I've worked with a lot of very ineffective leaders, and I've learned, I think, a lot more from the ineffective ones, because you can do better practice from seeing what not to do. From your perspective, getting back to the question, I don't want to get too long-winded with this, is do you need to be aggressively competitive to be an effective leader?
Great question. I'd say you definitely don't to be a great leader. So I'm just thinking back to all the leaders that I've seen, and I think what makes a really great leader is someone that is able to influence, inspire their team, and also being able to communicate whatever their message or their outcome or intended goal is. They need to be able to listen to their team and be able to execute, or have the whole team on board to be able to execute that desired outcome.
Thank you for that response, because it links into the next theme that I'd like to ask you about. Now, you did mention those that leaders lead, so the staff in an organisation. In your travels, and again, and this is quite a good thing to have someone from the recruitment space to ask this of, because I've had a few of you that work in the recruitment and selection field, but I might ask you this, particularly from your perspective, mate, if I could. Leadership versus management. Now, are they on a spectrum? Are they completely different things in your mind? And if they are, how are they linked? What's your view on that, mate?
Completely different. So I believe that managers, they're able to sort of control the team to that desired outcome, where leaders, they try and get the best out of the team by influencing, persuading, and inspiring. So I can completely different. So I love leaders. So my favorite leaders would be Tony Robbins, Tom Bilyeu. Absolutely love Tom Bilyeu, and I was lucky enough to meet him earlier on during the year. So those people that just motivate and inspire for you to take action towards whatever your goal or dreams are.
The leaders that you've seen, the ones that are at that level of being an inspiration, are they few and far between, or do you see them a lot in your travels?
I've seen a lot of great leaders. And that's, so I've dealt with all different industries. And I think what makes them great is their skill set. So I believe a skill set is anyone can be a leader, and it's having that right skill set. So it's a case of going through, wins, losses and then actually learning from those. And I know everyone's got different personalities, and I'm just trying to think about like these guys that have been pretty successful. I think actually they've got something sort of special or something ingrained in them, in their personality as well.
Are you talking about God and my supervisor? I'm doing some postgraduate studies. He shoot me for ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
An X factor, something that is not easily seen, that makes them effective, or if you took some time, you actually work out what that is?
Yeah, so I think most of the leaders that I'm thinking about, they've got some sort of backstory where they've had maybe not traumatic, but maybe some experience that has, shaped their lives, and that they want things to be different for themselves and for other people, and they truly want to impact the world, for the better.
And that I appreciate that response, because I've heard that in the podcasts I've done with entrepreneurs, that they said that there was something in their life that they wanted to change, or something in the system that for them was what distinguished them from leaders and being entrepreneurs. But again, that's the whole nother debate. Let me ask you, Dre, and this very interested in this from a recruitment perspective. When you've met the leaders that you have, the topic that I want to flesh out a little bit on this, because I think it comes up and it's very much linked to mental health and how you organize your life around work, is that leadership can be a lonely road. Do you subscribe to that, or is it as lonely as you want to make it?
It's that's a great question, and that's a really difficult question, because I'm just thinking about like myself, but then I'm thinking, I'm comparing. I know you probably shouldn't compare, but comparing myself to other leaders like that I've met with, and great leaders are able to have good relationships or even a family. So if their family are supportive, then they're able to, to set out to achieve what they want to and make that impact. And I'm just thinking about myself, is that I feel for me personally, it's being a little bit vulnerable. Yeah, it's very sort of lonely, and I can only sort of concentrate on growing my business. So I've had relationships in the past, I'm going to say 10 years, 12 years. And it's like, for me, my focus has just been work. So for some reason, I don't know if it's something in me. It's just, I can only sort of do one thing. So I'd love to have a family and kids, but I've got like my mission, and it's something that I need to set out and do for myself.
Yeah, okay. And look, there's never any judgment in this kind of topic, but you're the first to bring that up. And I guess there's the sense that I get from that response is almost an apologetic tone. And it's not, I personally feel, if that's what you've got to do, and you're not accountable to anybody else, so you don't have a family, you don't have a significant other, then this thing about achieving balance, if that's your focus and you're a single person without other responsibilities, to me, it's not necessarily a detrimental thing. Now, however, if you spend 24 hours a day on your business and you do absolutely nothing else, I guess that's probably not an adaptive thing. And for those listening, Dre is laughing out loud here, and I'm guessing that maybe that's sometimes part of your life, but surely you balance that out. Or if you didn't, has there been a trigger point in your life, mate, that you've gone, oh shit, maybe I need to have a break for a week or a day or something, just so that I'm not thinking the business? Has that happened?
It's only really when, I guess, other people have pointed that out. So like if it was myself, I can just sort of like keep going. And I always feel that I haven't done enough. At the end of the day, it's like, oh, okay, I've accomplished a lot, but I could have done so much more. So I'm working on not trying to beat myself up and just be happy with my results. But I've still got so much more to do and achieve. So,
well, that's a nice thing to hear, that you've got a network of either colleagues or friends, and I won't ask you to name them, obviously, that can pick you up on that and say, hey, mate, maybe take a breather for a little bit. The business isn't going to go anywhere. But I'm not having taken that kind of risk myself, I can kind of understand why you would go down that pathway if what you're trying to achieve is highly personal to you. And one thing that hasn't come up a lot, as in I haven't openly asked the question, but Dre, measuring success, mate. You've mentioned that you're highly driven and you've got goals that you want to achieve. What does success look like for you, mate?
So for me, I've got a goal to impact 100,000 people to kickstart their career by the end of 2023. So I'd love to be able to achieve that within the next year and a half. So that's something that I'm really working towards. And then I'd 10x my goal to like a million people. So success for me is to be able to positively inspire other people to take action towards their goals. So if I can do that in any way by being a shining example, then that's success for me.
What measures of success do organizations or businesses look for in people?
Yeah, it's the impact that they've had on the company. So if there's been a leader that has, been able to increase sales by, 5-10%, whatever that may be, and had company growth. So taking it from, say, a struggling company to a successful company, then that's what they're looking for. So if I flip that around and the outcomes that, say, a job seeker was looking for. So their outcome is, all right, I'd love to, find a full-time job. So that's the outcome. And then it's all the steps in between of how they get there. So number one, they need to get clear on their career vision. So a bit of clarity. Number two, they need to brand themselves and position themselves in the market. Number three, they need to have a list of companies that they'd love to work for. Number four, that they need to be able to connect and engage with those key decision makers in those companies. Number five, nail that interview. Number six, being able to close off the interview and, negotiate salary. And then the next step is just actually winning that job. So that's success, and that's just breaking it down. That's the outcome, and that's just breaking it down into different steps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Leader capabilities. Now, this one I'll ask in two parts if I can.
Yeah.
What do you feel are your key leader capabilities, given that you run your own business and so you're out there doing your own thing, versus what you think in broader terms people are looking for in leaders, those capabilities that people want to see in a leader?
That's a great question. So that's a really good question. So for me, I'm hardworking, dedicated, very consistent. Good leaders. I think it comes back to being able to inspire a large group of people to that outcome, to influence and inspire, and also being able to anticipate one step ahead. So if there's any foreseeable problems, and then just executing on that goal. Yeah.
Well, when you say influence and being able to bring people with you, are you talking, if I had to marry those up to one overarching term, you mean being a good communicator, or is it more than that?
Yeah, so yes, it's more than that. So say if the company's, missions, visions and values, the leader, lives and breathes those values, and it just goes from the top down. So that influence. So everyone in the group or the team being on board to work towards that one common goal.
Let me ask you this, because I've for those that are listening, please, I'll put a link to the stuff that Dre is doing on LinkedIn, which is quite interesting work in my mind. And one thing that sort of stood out is the authenticity of what you do online. So in terms of authentic leadership, or being able to trust people in positions of leadership, do you think our radar is attuned to people that are just full of, what in a leadership role, if they really don't believe what they're doing, it's easily picked up on? Yeah,
it's human nature. We can tell when someone is, giving us BS. And I think the best leaders are authentic, they're themselves, and they don't care what other people think of them. So they've got a mission, they've got a goal, they want to get to that outcome. So they'll be themselves, and people love that when other people are themselves. They can buy into, to what they're doing.
Sure, I'd be interested to see the blooper the blooper reel and the stuff that you produce.
There's a lot.
Mate, let me ask the following, and again, drawing on your experience in your leadership pathway, as well as those that you've seen of others that you've dealt with. And it's that nature versus nurture argument. Are leaders born, or are they made?
Leaders are definitely made. So just going back to what I said earlier, it's just acquiring a skill set. So whether that's communication, problem solving, the ability to to be able to listen and understand what like your clients or your team are actually saying. So definitely, yeah, leaders are made.
Looking back on your leadership pathway, what would you say to a younger version of yourself about being an effective leader?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'd say to myself, that's a great question, absolutely great question. I'd say actually believe in yourself, back yourself, and then just be consistent and disciplined like throughout.
Thanks again for listening. I've been speaking to Dre McLaughlin, a fantastic podcast, and thanks again for joining me and supporting the content I'm putting together. If you can, please go to YouTube, become a subscriber, or if you can, share the podcast with others in your network. I'm trying to grow this podcast resource to help emerging and existing leaders. As always, I thank you for your time. I'll catch you all on the next podcast.